let's talk about homelessness in the U.S., which has hit a record high.
Well, can I start with this bill first?
Oh, yeah.
I also like how this is phrased, Kentucky Republicans, like it's just a Republican problem that hates unhoused people. So Kentucky politicians, let's say, propose a bill to allow, quote, deadly physical force on homeless people by homeowners. No, you didn't hear that wrong, folks. The bill known as the Safer Kentucky Act, unless you're homeless, then it's really not this. It's the much unsafer Kentucky
known
Act.
as the Safer for Rich People Kentucky Act.
So
wow.
Basically, it says it will allow property owners to use deadly physical force on homeless individuals if deemed necessary.
And who deems it necessary?
Exactly.
Anyone with a home?
You might deem it necessary if you see the person close to your property, right? Because look, we've all been there. We've seen somebody almost stepping on the grass and you lose your shit and you take out your gun and
you murder them.
Yeah, and I think that I understand. Like, I see where you're coming from.
Absolutely.
Because you spend a lot of time on that grass, right?
You spend time on that little green plants that are about yay tall. And if they get to yay tall, that's very offensive. So you want to keep them yay tall.
But then if somebody steps on them, so they go like this.
And then they bend over it, you got to murder them.
Yeah. That's the first thing.
Sorry, can I just
yes,
cut my comedy for a minute? This is insanity.
Yeah.
Jesus. Murdering someone because they're homeless is it also, it seems like they're like skipping like 15 steps. Why didn't they pass a bill saying you can kick homeless people? I mean, that would have been less
because
horrible.
Nobody does that in the U.S. Everyone just grabs a gun. When was the last time you saw a mass kicking? People don't do that here. People immediately grab their guns.
Mass kickings might be funny, but this is just so insanely psychopathic. I mean, this actually speaks to how America is going in a larger way, just towards psychopath will. Psychopathville. Just straight there. Like you can just, that person is having a rough time. They don't have a home. I should be able to stab or murder them or assault them, or like just that thought to even come up with this bill is just a level of psychopathy. It's like unbelievable.
And at the same time, if you want to house homeless people like that pastor did in Chicago when it was minus $1 billion outside and they would have died, and then he got arrested for it.
Yeah.
So just look at like where those scales of justice are in the United States, right? We're going to make it legal to shoot homeless people, but holy shit, if you try to make them not homeless, if you make them homed people, then you go to jail.
Yeah. You can also be arrested for feeding people.
Oh, yeah. Food Not Bombs is like very frequently arrested.
I recently wrote an article on my locals page about how everything that's right and just and moral in this world is now illegal in the United States. Mm-hmm. Helping people, housing people, taking care of children. It's all illegal.
So at the same time, the Supreme Court right now is listening to the case of Grants Pass versus Johnson, considering whether criminalizing homelessness is constitutional. So basically, they're looking at the 8th Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. Here's why I don't think that'll stand. Cruel and unusual punishment is what the United States does.
Right.
Like, how many times have people tried to make the case that the death penalty is cruel and unusual punishment, that solitary confinement, that our prison system, I don't know, in general is cruel and unusual punishment? And every court has just been like, meh, no, I don't think so. Cruel, but usual. So if it has to be both, no.
Cruel, usual punishment, yeah.
Right.
I used to have a bit about they ruled that the electric chair was not cruel and unusual, and I was like, even if you want to ignore the cruel thing, how do you argue that's not unusual? Strapping a guy to a chair and sending 1 billion volts through him till he shits himself and smoke comes out of his ears, that's not unusual? Where do you live? How is that not unusual?
Yeah. But I guess if you live in a state where that happens.
But the other
Pretty
thing about
frequently.
this, this harm homeless stuff is like these are literally the people in our country with the least among us. They
Mhm.
are the ones having the most difficulty. Half of all homeless people have some sort of mental illness. A lot of them have PTSD. Like the idea that those people need to be less protected. They're just too protected in our country is so insane.
Well, and
So insane.
this also makes a distinction between people who have a home being humans and people who don't not being humans. You can shoot them. Why? Because they're not people. Um and at the same time, this is from December of last year. Homelessness in the US has hit a record high. Because of course, President Biden, everybody's favorite for the people president, let all of that aid that was like barely keeping people together during the pandemic, that just stopped. And so people lost like the very little bit of thread that they were using to hang on and are now homeless. So we're hitting record numbers of homeless people, and it's only rising.
And this is while the Democrats are running around in an election year trying to say, look at how much good Biden has done for you. He should be this sack of rotting flesh should be reelected. It's like homelessness literally at a record high right now.
And again, it's only going to continue to rise. And like I'm sure a lot of people listening to this understand this, but you are one or two emergencies away from being homeless. We all are.
Yeah.
Unless you happen to have a trust fund. But we're all like one or two emergencies away, usually medical, right? Emergencies away from being homeless, because there is no help in this system. There is no support in this system. So again, like just the idea that we can other these people to the point where we think it's okay to shoot them is even more remarkable when you think about the fact 99% of us are like that close to being homeless. And so this is absolutely abhorrent. And I definitely hope that people in Kentucky are fighting this with regards to the Supreme Court ruling. I doubt we'll see anything there. I mean, homelessness is already criminalized in a lot of places, if not like by putting people in jail. At the very least, you're allowed to just move them at will. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard from folks from North Carolina to California to Washington State to DC about homeless sweeps where they literally like sweep people away as if they're trash. And wherever they end up, that's fine, just as long as you're not here.
And in DC, where you were working to help some homeless folks at a camp, the cops bulldozed the tents and ended up severely harming one of the homeless people who was in one of the tents, still in the tent while they were bulldozing the tents.